The pain of those Jewish settlers being forced out of Gaza is all too real. They will remember it for the rest of their lives.
And I'm sure that we'll be able to implement a disengagement plan with all its difficulties quietly and peacefully.
It's a significant moment in history that you're seeing unfold right now, laden with tremendous emotions.
Now that Israel has withdrawn, the way forward is clear. The Palestinians must show the world that they will fight terrorism and govern in a peaceful way.
Moments earlier, the last Israeli troops had pulled out of the region. Palestinian crowds tore apart some synagogues and set them on fire.
Palestinian infighting erupts in gunfire on the streets of Gaza. Violence, a symbol of the generational rift within the ruling Fatah party. Well, Fatah officials warn that if Hamas wins the parliamentary elections, it would, quote, drive the final nail into the coffin of the peace process.
Good evening from Jerusalem. We begin tonight with a sea change in the Middle East. Hamas, the militant Islamic group that calls for the destruction of Israel, has won the Palestinian parliamentary elections in a landslide.
One after another, world leaders have called on Hamas to renounce violence, to recognize the state of Israel. Otherwise, they say, it can't be business as usual.
As we have said, you cannot have one foot in politics and the other in terror.
Every step toward freedom in the world makes our country safer, so we will act boldly in freedom's cause.
In Egypt today, voters went to the polls in that country's first ever competitive president.
Millions of Afghans went to the polls today in an historic election.
Today is a monumental day in Iraq's march toward democracy as Iraqis vote for the first time in a constitutional government.
Another American has been killed in Iraq today.
The entire Arab world and much of the world in general is now watching as Saddam Hussein and 7 other defendants are brought up on charges related.
5 other American soldiers and 1 Marine were also killed in separate attacks.
And the Americans and Iraqis have established a combat outpost in the middle of the western desert to stop.
Huge challenges still face the Iraqis and the coalition, but there are important signs of progress.
Terrorists like bin Laden are serious about mass murder, and all of us must take their declared intentions seriously.
It has happened again. The world jolted by the horror of terrorism.
Down the end of the road as quickly and as safely.
This morning, there was another deadly act of terrorism in Egypt.
Investigators in Indonesia are trying to track down the plotters of
Al-Qaeda targeted the hotels to kill, quote, Jews and crusaders. But most of the dead and wounded are Jordanian.
We're going to begin in Israel, where terrorists strike again.
Absolute and utter devastation, as I say. Shattered glass, broken glass, cars.
CNN, a number of casualties are reported in the explosion on Tuesday at a shopping mall in Netanya in Israel.
Begin with terror in the Israeli coastal town of Hadera. Israeli police say a suicide bomber has killed at least 5 people.
Police and rescue workers say the bomber blew himself up outside a bus station Sunday in the town of Beersheba. 21 people were hurt, 2 of them seriously.
Islamic militant groups have previously said they have no shortage of young men prepared to kill themselves in order to kill Israelis.
Again in Beirut today, a massive and emotional crowd packed in downtown Beirut. This for the funeral of Rafik Hariri this morning. Hysterical mourners grabbed at the coffin of the assassinated former prime minister. There have been angry shouts accusing Syria of involvement in Monday's bombing.
State Department official today called for a complete and immediate withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon.
North in this country, south in this country, east and west cities are once again burning. What does it mean for France? And indeed, what does it mean for the wider Europe? Perhaps simply an early skirmish between old Europe and the new Europe made up largely of Arab and African immigrants.
The firestorm ignited last week when newspapers, first in Denmark, then in other European countries, printed caricatures of the Muslim prophet Muhammad. The protest spread to Lebanon from Syria, where the Danish and Norwegian embassies were attacked and set ablaze.
Let's begin with Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and his decision to quit the Likud party.
This is a political scenario never before seen in modern Israeli history. A sitting Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, will abandon his ruling Likud party. He'll jump ship and he'll form a brand new centrist political movement.
Following Sharon's departure, Benjamin Netanyahu has returned as head of the Likud party. 6 years after he left the helm, Bibi is back. Amir Peretz is now the chairman of the Labor Party. In a stunning upset, he defeated Shimon Peres, reshuffling the political deck in Israel.
For the second time in less than 3 weeks, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has been rushed to the hospital. He suffered a stroke.
As Ariel Sharon lies unconscious, the reins of power have passed to this man, Ehud Olmert, the Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Israel, as you know, is a vibrant democracy with very strong institutions, with long-lasting traditions, rule of law. And what is important, that it is a seamless transition of power.
Iran today reaffirmed its determination to resume nuclear processing. Now, the nuclear challenge came as Iran's new president took office in Tehran.
Iran's president stood before the UN General Assembly a little more than a week ago to deliver a harsh diatribe against those who would block its nuclear ambitions.
Iran, defying much of the international community, restarted its uranium conversion program at their Isfahan nuclear installation on Monday.
President Bush warns Iran, step back from building a nuclear bomb.
Iran, armed with a nuclear weapon, poses a grave threat to the security of the world.
The UN's Atomic Energy Agency held an emergency meeting today in Vienna following Iran's resumption of critical nuclear processing.
27 of the 35 nations on the IAEA Board of Governors voted to refer Iran's case to the UN Security Council.
Iran's new president says Israel is a blight and should be wiped off the map. He goes on to deny the Holocaust ever occurred.
The current president of Iran has announced that the destruction of Israel is an important part of their agenda. And the development of a nuclear weapon would make them a step closer to achieving that objective.
As the Imam said, Israel must be wiped off the map. Wiped off the map.